Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be discussing PMQs as usual, as Starmer raised the cost of living crisis again, and Sunak basically said that anyone who has a problem with it is just jealous of his wealth. I'm not sure that "shut up, you're just jealous" is the best response a Prime Minister could come up with to a public concerned about falling living standards, but I'm sure he knows what he's doing. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Keir Starmer began his questions by ridiculing the Tory MP George Freeman for seeing his mortgage go up by £1,200 a month and being forced to quit his dream job to pay for it, referring to the fact that Freeman claimed he quit the government last year because he could not afford his mortgage on a salary of £118,000 a year. I shall be discussing him in a video tomorrow. But Starmer was pointing to a Tory MP counting the cost of Tory chaos, as he put it. And Sunak responded by saying that if Starmer really cared, he would focus on what's been done. Taxes are being cut, he said, but that Labour had described these cuts as salting the earth and scorched earth policy, which of course invited Starmer to point out that the taxes weren't being cut. Taxes are going up, he said, and you're just giving a bit of those tax rises back and expecting people to dance in the streets. He asked Sunak how much monthly mortgage payments were going up. Needless to say, Sunak did not answer. He did, however, say that someone with a monthly mortgage of, say, about £800 a month, which is just a little bit above the average, would be able to save money as a result of measures allowing them to extend. Now, I imagine that most people with a mortgage know enough about terms of a mortgage, terms of long-term loans, to realise that if you extend the repayment period, it costs you more money. It doesn't save you money. You may pay smaller instalments each month, but you're going to be paying those instalments for a lot longer. So over the long term, it's more money going out. That is not exactly in line with his claim to be running a government of long-term planning, is it? Sunak is essentially telling people to pay even more for their houses and keep themselves in debt for longer, just to ease their passage through a cost of living that the Tories seem to want to deny even exists. But Starmer persisted. He asked again, those coming off fixed rate mortgages, how much are their payments increasing by? Then Sunak said that because of measures announced by the Chancellor, mortgages will stay essentially the same. But that is not true. The repayments will increase, or you will increase your repayment period and have to pay out more money in the long run. To say nothing of what renters do, they don't get a choice in the matter. And Starmer might well have, asked at this point, I would have thought, if people take advantage of your scheme, right, to fix their monthly payments at what they are now, how much extra are they going to pay in the long run? And for how many extra months or years are they going to be saddled with the debt? I actually think he should have done that. Or if he did want to move on to something else more quickly, as he seemed to, at least just quote the figures for himself for the benefit of those listening. But then Starmer talked about a worker that he met at Iceland, the food store, not the country, whose mortgage was going up by £1,000 a month. His name was Phil. Good name. Starmer asked how, if a Tory minister couldn't afford it on £120,000 a year, how could Phil? Now, this was a good question for two reasons. First, the obvious one, this Phil is just an ordinary worker whose mortgage is going up by almost as much as the Tory ministers went up, but he's not earning anywhere near £120,000 a year. And if a Tory minister can't afford it, how can an ordinary worker? But then there was the less obvious reason for this question, I suspect. It was a way of plugging the fact that the chairman of Iceland, who's been a Tory donor, has now come out as supporting Labour for this election. It was a case of Starmer reminding Tory MPs opposite that some of the money that used to flow into their coffers is now heading into Labour's war chest. And Sunak responded by saying that inflation was coming down and tax cuts were benefiting people. Except, of course, lower inflation doesn't mean things are getting cheaper, just more expensive, more slowly. And the tax cuts amount to nothing. An extra £1,000 a month on some mortgage payments, but £40 a month tax cuts? Who's Sunak trying to fool? This sort of trickery, it does work in politics if you're talking about something that is not the lived experience of your target voters, right? So If you're talking about something you're doing for people, say, on low incomes, but your target voters are the people you're trying to fool are on average incomes, you get away with it because it's not their lived experience. But Sunak is trying to hoodwink the actual people living this. They know they're not benefiting. They know what their tax cuts are. They know it's a few tens of pounds. They know what the increasing costs are of council tax, of mortgage payments, of rents, food. They can still see how their costs are increasing more than the increase in take-home pay. He asked if Starmer explained to Phil how he would have to pay the £28 billion a year green investment. It should be simple. Phil won't pay a penny. Mind you, there are reports that Labour are going to split that £28 billion investment into its constituent parts to stop the Tories banging on about it all the time. But I'll discuss that more maybe later or certainly when the manifesto is published. And Starmer asked Sunak to explain to Phil how paying an extra £1,000 a month will make him better off. He said most people don't have that money available. He also explained that council tax was going up as well. At which point Sunak gave a response which has raised quite a few eyebrows amongst quite a few commentators. Sunak accused Starmer of resorting to the politics of envy. Oh dear. Because the thing is, Sunak did actually make one good point in his response, but I think he lost it with his first part, because Starmer was speaking on behalf of concerned voters across the country. And I don't mean in the tribal sense of, I think my party represents people's interests and the Tories don't, and therefore the Labour leader is automatically always, representing the people. I don't mean that. I mean, there are a lot of voters who are concerned about the cost of living still rising. There are a lot of people coming off their fixed rate mortgages this year. A lot of them. And Starmer was asking questions that they would like to ask the Prime Minister. So to accuse Starmer of the politics of envy by asking these questions is to accuse those same voters who would like to ask them of being jealous of Sunak's wealth. That is not a good look, and Labour will surely make something of this, because all last year they scored a lot of hits with the public by painting Sunak as out of touch. Not just rich, but out of touch. Every time he talks to a person, he comes across as out of touch, doesn't understand the life they lead, detached. And this outburst just gives Labour more ammunition. But after punching himself in the face, Sunak did bring up a good point. He said that Labour attacks the government for lifting the bonus cap for bankers. But now Labour have said that they are not going to change this policy in government. Now, yes, it doesn't automatically follow that if you oppose a policy, but then it goes through anyway, just because you won't reinstate it doesn't mean you now agree with the policy. There are times when you can oppose a policy, but leave it as it is when it's in power. It might not be worth the hassle of changing it, for example. But I do think this was a poor move from Labour. And I don't just mean because I disagree with the policy. There's lots of policies I disagree with, but if I can see the political or electoral wisdom, I go, okay, fine. It's because I don't see the wisdom at all here. Labour saying they won't reintroduce the caps on banker bonus doesn't give them anything amongst target voters. These bankers are very few in number and are of no electoral use to Labour. And even if Labour were to be specifically asked about the policy, they didn't have to commit anything. They could say, yeah, we remained opposed. We wouldn't have removed those caps, they could say. And then if they're asked, so does that mean you'll reinstate it? They could say, well, we'll see. I mean, there's only so much you could do. You've got limited parliamentary time. There's lots to fix after 14 years of Tory chaos. That's understandable. You can say that, right? But by explicitly now saying they will not restore the caps, they not only tie their hands in future should they feel that actually they ought to, but it's an easy attack line from not only Sunak, but Stephen Flynn of the SNP, he was on it too. Spectacular own goal, I felt. Sunak characterised it as, oh, you can't believe what Starmer says because he keeps changing policies, which is a little bit rich from, of course we're committed to HSC. Oh yeah, I'm scrapping it. Flynn characterises it as saying that Labour are endorsing unpopular Tory policies. And for what? What's the benefit to Labour? Can't be votes. And there can't be an economic reason, because opposing the policy of removing the cap did not mean that they were committed to reinstating it. They could have just said nothing about it. And if asked, gone, yeah, it's not a good idea. But do you know what? We'll have to work out what the priorities are for our legislative programme after the election. Careless, I thought. But because Sunak put his foot in it with the politics of envy outburst, didn't stop Starmer pressing his advantage still. For his final question, he said that he did not expect Sunak to laugh at Phil, that he just doesn't get how hard it is for people. He said Sunak's just so detached, can't even fool his own MPs, and George Freeman is exhausted and wants jobs outside Parliament. So why doesn't he just call an election? To which Sunak just said that he was getting on with the plan and promoted his new policy of tackling vaping and getting pharmacies to prescribe drugs because we have no doctors to do it now. But the carelessness of the change of policy on bankers' bonuses aside, still a definite win for Starmer. The cost of living is really important to a lot of key voters as well as the general public. It's not going to ease this year. Tories keep saying, oh, it'll improve this year. Oh, we'll be a better position for the autumn election based purely on small amounts of pretend tax cuts and slightly lower inflation. It's getting worse. And those paying attention know it. They know that people are going to have to be tighter with their budgets. They know that there are going to be more cost of living problems coming our way as well. Whole new ones, not just the existing ones not going away or getting worse. They know that. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.